to start the day. We have a very interesting perspective now. It's the same topic, the independent film, themes, reach, and sustainability. However, delivering the keynote address here and setting the agenda for the panel that follows on theatrical distribution for independent films and art house cinema, we have someone who's been a producer, who heads the guild, the Producers Guild, who's also got one foot in distribution, in the distributors mix, and is a fantastic finance brain. I keep saying that, I'm digging up history on you, and it's very special history because Namesake really found its financial structure, the way the finance was done, because of the way this gentleman structured it. But that's not really the topic for the day. The topic for the day is theatrical distribution for independent films and art house cinema, and actually figuring out the themes, reach, and sustainability of all that, but this time from the perspective of someone who gets the finance, is about finance and distribution. So Shibashish Sarkar, the president of the Producers Guild of India, apart from the many other hats that he dons. Please, would like to invite you to come.
Hi, actually, I've been hearing the conversation which Sid was doing, and I think at the end of the conversation, I told Sid that there is nothing else to speak, right? Whatever queries got answered or don't answered, and if something didn't get answered, that means they can't get answered in the next session. So I'll quickly, basically, try to touch upon some perspectives. And then probably we can get into the panel discussion. As Anupama said, that I basically come from a finance background, and I was not a part of the media industry in my entire career. My journey of media entertainment industry is probably last 20 odd years, but I'm basically a chartered accountant all my life. First part of my life I worked in hardcore FMCG. And then when I came into media, everything looked from a tangible world to intangible. And that was my learning process to think of that if this is a business, if this is a structure, how do you structure finance? How do you structure monetization? How do you monetize a value out of a work which gets created out of love and affection? There has to be a business sense in any investment, in any project. And this business also has its own sense. Now, if you look at, if you look at last 30, 40 years or maybe 50 odd years of this journey of independent film in India and globally, the trajectory has been, at least from the monetization or structuring part, the trajectory has been different. And no harm in that, because our industry is still like a 110 years old industry, vis-a-vis in compared to we look at the developed market. It takes a long time for them and to evolve wherever it is evolved. I'll share probably a couple of my own experiences very early in my career, which Anupama spoke about Namesake. To correct it, it is not that I have structured it. There was a group of colleagues, and of course I was started my career in UTV. The best brain was Ronnie Screwvala, and we all learned under him in the situation. It was early, I think 2006, 2005 or 2006 maybe, when Ronnie in these days, and it was even before IPO, UTV in those days was a small company, a small privately owned company, but with a lot of passion and interest. And we got an opportunity of being a producer in a film which was Namesake, but by no means or by no ability we would have had that kind of money to put in. I think if I remember, in those days it was not less than $9-10 million. In today's world, it may look different, but in those days, $9-10 million for a company like UTV is like a phenomenal quantum. Interestingly, if I recall, I think it was then as a part of the structuring and negotiations, we got into like, there was the Japanese co-producer, there was UTV, and then there was an American producer. And very early days, and the banks, I mean, to just tell you something, the banks still today, probably, the financial institutions still today can't recognize or understand this film industry completely. But in those almost like 18 years back, or 15, 16 years back, we structured a funding understanding where an Indian bank gives something called a standby letter of credit. If there is an instrument, if there are finance guys in this room, they will understand this. As a letter of credit means basically they just give a commitment. Based on that commitment or based on that letter of credit, we raise money in US of our share. And all the three partners have to put in the money first, get the completion bond done, get the financial closure, and then only the movie went into the flow. Never knew that in the latter part of the year, latter part of my career, I think almost 5-6 years down the line, not 5-6, I think 2-3 years down the line, when I joined Reliance, in 2008, Reliance invested probably anything between 2008 and 2015, probably invested almost like $500 million in Steven Spielberg's company, DreamWorks. That's a fascinating experience we have got. I was lucky to get that in terms of that, how do they structure films? It is not that they put equity money into the films to make films. It's the way that world works, or even later on we did some films with Gurinda Chadda, Viceroy's House, and etc. The way that world works is that the first thing first, when a script gets structured, or when a producer comes on the board, not necessarily a studio comes on the board, but a producer comes on the board, based on that merit, the films get sold in the territories. And I'm also talking of an era which is even before the Netflix, Amazon of the world have started their journey. I'm talking of probably pre-2015, pre-2016 kind of a scenario when there was no digital revenues per se. So the movies were sold according to the territories. So the first important part is that you get a sales agent. If you can get a sales agent of respect and repute, you do your circle in the festivals. And if it is get picked up, then you started get sales sold in the territories. The important part is that when they buy the territories, those contracts are watertight. It's not so much what we have seen in India. The contracts are watertight. People will not back out of the contract. And then based on those contracts, you can raise money. And raise money in a structured financing route from the best of the banks, from the best of the global banks. There is very, like whether you look at European market or even in US, there are banks and institutions who has a large portfolio of media and entertainment of the films, unlike it is still a nascent world in India. But based on those binding contracts and agreement, you raise money, and whatever was the distribution money you raise in advance, that money goes to your production. You complete the film. Many times that this production also is not enough, so you probably tie up anything between 50-60% of the monies. Remember that when they sell the territories, interestingly, the territories are not sold only for a theatrical right on X right or Y right. They buy out completely. So like if you are selling France, so France digital rights, satellite right, TV rights, pay TV, terrestrial, theatrical, everything will be bought out for that territory, for that window. That's why I'm saying it was at the pre-digital era, pre-Netflix, Amazon era. Means Netflix was still then a video rental company, or not the digital behemoth, what it is today. So territories used to get sold in that manner, and based on those territories monetization, you at least get a 50-60% of the money, which you can through loan, which you can put into the production. And at least in the US or the UK markets, I have seen that if the projects, there is a very significant level of homework also happen in terms of where you can get what kind of credit or subsidy. Like most of the states, even in North America, most of the states have their identified different subsidy or credits. European, many of the countries are there. So a significant amount of producers effort goes in terms of structuring that in which country, where if I shoot, in how manner I can shoot, how much portion of the, not the 30-40% left, but at least anything between 15-20% can be mopped up or not. Then you leave the probably, the other interesting part in those markets, you are ideally not allowed to, generally not allowed to start the film unless there's a complete financial closure. So the last 15-20%, then they look that if somebody is willing to put an equity risk, whether it is a studio, whether there is a production house, and etc. Probably, of course, in case of DreamWorks case, it was not so much apparent like that because there's a large production house. They used to have deals with Disney, and now it is currently there with Universal. So they used to get substantial advance from the Disney for making the products. Apart from the equity investment, whatever we have done from a Reliance Entertainment one, then Alibaba also came into the picture. Very interesting, like when Alibaba came into the picture, Alibaba put an equity. The only strong point of that equity deal was that all DreamWorks film in China will be distributed by Alibaba. So they probably, apart from the equity investment, that was their kicker at the end of the day. But most of the smaller organizations, smaller films or the smaller production houses is to tie up in this manner. The world actually has changed, and it's, of course, I won't touch about the COVID, but even before the COVID, like if you look at from 2017, 2016-17 or 2018-19 onwards, the sales market overall globally has started reducing its importance. I think most of you make your travel to like your Cannes and Berlins and AFMs of the world. What I used to see in my first probably 10-15 years of my career, the last 7-8 years, and post-COVID, of course, the scenario has changed further. The so-called sales market where you take a product and things get sold depending upon the importance, that importance has started getting reduced. And one important thing what is got reduced is because, I think in a different way that probably because of the advent of the digital monetization or the digital opportunity. Theatrical was always a challenge for indie films or etc. And that challenge was there. The challenge still remains now. But a substantial portion of monetization earlier, which is to depend upon the pay TV and the structuring, that part has now got shifted to the power strengths of the most of the global digital tech companies. There are more tech companies than entertainment companies. Like if you look at Amazon, Netflix, Disney, Microsoft, you can the laundry list of the 10-odd companies or 20-odd companies which are there. And many cases, these companies start buying rights globally. They don't entertain that you sell rights according to the territory. So where is that specialization of a sales agent? Because most of these companies over the last 1 decade has also set up their local offices. So if there is a good indie film of coming from India, you don't have to think that, okay, I'll take it to Cannes and sell it. You have to just make 1 kilometer radius of this hotel, you should get a buyer. And if you don't get a buyer, then you don't expect that, okay, I'll take it to Cannes and Netflix will buy it in Cannes. So that whole strength of the sales agent over a period of time, it is not completely gone, but I personally believe, my own hunch, that over the next 1 decade, I don't foresee that why there will be a sales agent. The more and more number of intermediaries will go. Because the technology is becoming stronger and stronger. There is no information gap between the creator and the buyer for that matter. And probably a time will come that audience will decide. And so the moment that segment is going away, a little negative impact of the situation is the creators or the producers are left on their own in terms of making those judgmental calls and making up those abilities to sell and etc. That's probably the world, what we have seen over a period of last, say, 25, 30 odd years to the limited of whatever is my experience globally, where in terms of the monetization, in terms of the rights, I think the most important monetization rights today we are talking of either digital or the pay TV, because if these two things can get secured for the kind of films what we are talking of today, I think there is a large chance, forget about the monetization, in one way, that is also a catalyst that ultimately the product what you have created are getting to the audience or not. There is a large chance that if we are able to monetize in somewhere getting to this platform, there is a chance that it will go and reach the audience and getting accepted there. the studio world, which used to rule for probably 50, 100 odd years, and even in Indian scenario point of view, I'm not too sure that whether next few decades the studios are going to continue or not. Because the power has shifted from there to the technology. So if you look at globally, all technology companies are all listed in NASDAQ and NYSE of the world. And they are constantly coming out with an opportunity for audience to test what they want to test, whether it is entertainment, whether there is a food, or whether there is any consumer behavior from that point of view. I don't see that why entertainment will remain different. So the power, what we have seen between the 50s, 60s, and later on of the large studios, you can see for yourself the kind of mergers and acquisitions, buying and selling, we are constantly reading every day in the newspaper. Because ultimately every monetization, every investment has to be a return. So the studios today, what we used to think as a studio, probably the last decade and the next few decades will shift to the technology companies, and rightfully so. And that leaves where people like us, is that I don't think that it changes our life. Actually, it has improved our life, because with the advent of technology, it is only opening up scenarios of creators to reach audience as quickly as possible. Think of a scenario 30 years back or 25 years back, when we were talking of indie film, or for that matter any other film. What is the money? We are primarily dependent upon the theatrical. But then with the advent of the pay TV, there is a segment which came out. Then advance with the digital, then segment has came out. Of course, some scenarios which are like a home videos and etc. have also gone. I mean, these are just advent of the technology. From a monetization point of view, from a theatrical, or ultimately how to create the monetization, I mean, how to structure the financing part, and then ultimately how to get the return for the investors, that challenge remains. And that probably, I think, we will get into the panel discussion. I have our colleagues here. And that is interesting, because in that background, what we see, the challenges which were there of indie films previously, those challenges will only evolve in the next decade. We also have to be completely conversant of those challenges, so that we are at least better prepared for the situation. Thank you.
Well, that, I don't know about all of you. I actually found that quite a scary notion right now. Scary at various levels. Scary because it really sums up in 15 odd minutes how the big studios, how those corporates actually view the creation and the recoupment, monetization, etc. of it. So now that we know what's happening in those corridors, we're going to shift, and we're going to open up, not shift. I would say it's all about inclusion. You need to know the system before you can disrupt it. So let's get into that now, and I'm going to invite, we've got Mayank Shroff, who is the head of programming and distribution at Cinepolis. A very interesting multiplex setup, but he'll give you more insights into that. I'm going to invite him. He's one of our panelists, who's going to talk about theatrical distribution and sales for the independent and art house cinema. Mayank, please. So, joining him on this panel is the director of Ashirwad Theatres, Akkshay Rathie. Very interesting model there, because they've been, I think the family's been in the business for almost 40 years now, right? And so yeah, all those lovely single screens and theaters that your parents or you might have grown up in, and then you slowly saw them getting into these multiplex structures, and the films that were running there, shifting, changing. Actually, what was supposed to be very diverse suddenly has become very homogeneous and just single. Multiplex has become single screen in a certain way. Yeah? So, single voice. So, I'm going to invite Akkshay to join this panel. It's a studio, multiplex, consortium of single screens and theaters, really a distribution system. And making sense of all of this, joining dots, is Liz Shackleton, the contributing editor Asia at Deadline. Liz has years of watching Asia, Indian cinema out there, the business of it, the workings of it, and I think we're very, very fortunate to have her lead this conversation, moderate this conversation. Thank you, Liz, all yours.
Thank you, Anupama. So I have to agree, that was a very insightful, but also slightly sobering keynote. It gives us lots to think about there. So I just want to start by getting our two exhibitors to, first of all, tell us a little bit about their cinema chains, and then explaining what the landscape is in India theatrically post-pandemic, because I think we can all say we're safely out of the pandemic now, but has India recovered its box office? So, Mayank, can we start with you?
Sure. Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thanks, Anupama. Thanks, Mami, for hosting us. And so I'll introduce myself. So that's Mayank here. I work for Cinepolis India. I'm responsible for programming and film distribution at Cinepolis India. And so to answer her, we have got a two-slider, basically, PPT, which we can just take you through. Shweta, hi. Okay. So before we get to that, the source is EY report 2023. And so what do we see here? We see the two mediums where we see the major revenues coming. That's theatrical and digital. And with seeing this, we believe both are important and both can definitely coexist. Both offerings are also very different. So 2019 now, which we say pre and post pandemic era. So we see theatrical contribution to the film entertainment industry was approx 74%. And now 2023 also estimated and projected is coming to approx 71. And which as per EY report will continue to similar numbers. So yes, theaters are important, theatrical revenues are there, and I'm sure this year there are 3 films which has crossed 500 crores plus, and it's been a record year for audience coming in theater, starting from Pathan, followed by Gadar 2, and then Jawan. So it was like absolutely phenomenal number. So on this slide, the right-hand side, which you see, so there's a film count and gross box office. So the entire right, the source is Cinepolis India itself data. So we release approx 1,000 films per year. Of course, in pandemic, it got down to approx 400. Then it started rising to approx 600. And then now we are back. Maybe this year we'll be back more than 1,100 or 1,200 films. This 2023 data is for first 3 quarters, which is Jan to September. And yeah, so the film count, and we have the contribution from Bollywood, Hollywood, and regional here. So there are films, out of these 1,000 films which we release, so mainstream is only 500. Others are all limited release films. It's something like Shri Raghupati, releasing in Assam with 50-75 prints, running for 7 weeks, houseful. And they did the number. Movies like Teen Ka in Gujarati. Regional films are increasing. Now, the contribution from regional films are increasing. And if you talk about the gross box office data for India, like we see 2023, we are estimating, to be more than 2019. It itself says that theater is important, and the future is here.
Thank you very much. Shall we sit again? So that was surprising to me, because it seems like all sectors are back to pre-pandemic levels. Last year, Hindi film was not doing so well, but it seems like now it's back to pre-pandemic levels. But regional is also doing well. Is that right?
That's right. And I believe when we were at home for most of the hours or all the time, so our habits have changed that time. We were watching content which were available at home, and we didn't want to go out, and we were a little like lazier. And then slowly when things opened, the roads opened, we also came out. We all went out. It was not like we all continued working from home. We all continued attending this conference, online on Zoom, and the audience were also attending like on Zoom. They all came, everyone came out. I came out, you all came out. So it's about habit. So habit is going back as the things are coming to normal.
And what about ticket prices? Have they changed in India during the pandemic?
Absolutely. So ticket pricing, we have always seen it's always economics, demand and supply. So Bombay, maybe Andheri and Juhu, where probably the demand is higher, the ATP is approx 300, 350. But again, some other part of Bombay, we have a cinema near Bhandup, at Bhandup near Powai, where our ticket price is approx 150. It's demand and supply. So I don't know how many of you are aware that one of the highest ticket price in India is in Patna, Bihar, because Bihar still has only 9 screen. 20 years back it was 9 screen, and still it has 9 screen. The ticket price is 450, and the occupancy level is also highest there. So yeah, in Gujarat, if you see, ticket prices like approx 150, 200.
But is some of the recovery to do with increase in ticket prices rather than admissions? Because in some other territories in Asia, box office has gone back up, but only because the ticket price has gone up. Admissions are actually down.
So yeah, so I believe India is a little different because Cinepolis operates in 17 countries, and among all 17 countries, India is leading in terms of admissions like to like from pre-pandemic. And one of the reason is number of content. Other countries, you usually have 300, 250, 300 films releasing in every year. And in India is 1,000 plus, as you saw. So one has got more options. And when you have more options, you try to pick up more. So that's one of the reasons.
Okay, thanks. So Akshay, if we turn to you, if you can just tell us a little bit about your cinema chain and the type of programming that you do.
Sure. So very good afternoon to all of you. Thank you, Mami, Anupama, everyone else for having us over. So a lot of you independent filmmakers would probably be wondering that what's an exhibitor from the Hindi heartland doing out here? Because the kind of movies that we stereotypically play or are associated with are the ones that Mayank mentioned, the Jawans, the Pathans, the Gadars of the world. Those are our bread and butter. But I'm here in a slightly different capacity. As an independent screen or chain owner, somewhere I relate to all of you because you aren't just independent filmmakers. At a certain level, all of you are entrepreneurs, and so are we. We work independently without any public funding or any venture capitalists who've put money on us, and a lot of you also do that. All of us really hustle to sail this ship. And that's where I really think that what I'd urge all of you to look at, instead of the problems that were addressed by Shibashish and Sid, which are all absolutely true, what we really need to focus on is trying to find solutions through disruptive, innovative ways. To give you an example, Liz, I was chatting with Anupama a couple of days ago, and she told me that a huge number of independent filmmakers have this stopgap funding problem where they manage to shoot the film up to a certain extent, and then the post-production or the release expenses become a problem, which was one of the questions that was asked in Sid's session. Now, here's a solution that over just 1 week of talking, we broadly managed to put together. Right at the back of this room, we have a gentleman here who runs a post-production studio. And we are trying to see if instead of you independent filmmakers having to pay through the skin of your teeth, hustling for that stopgap last bit of finance to complete your post-production, VFX if any, if a post-production studio that's actually working at a certain size and scale with its existing resources can come in as an equity partner. And we have somebody right here who's willing to do that. The same thing can happen with distribution. The same thing can happen with marketing. The same thing can happen with exhibition. And with all of us in the room, I'm sure that conversation needs to go in the direction where we can all, rather than treating each other as vendors, start treating each other as partners to really ensure that this doesn't become a favor that an exhibition chain is doing on the independent producers, but it actually becomes a sensible, commercially robust system where everyone benefits equally. So that's what I'm here to really speak about and engage with all the independent filmmakers and you around finding these solutions.
Have you started that journey yet? Have you programmed any independent films in your circuit?
Well, absolutely. Stereotypically, the kind of markets we operate in, the movie of the week that Siddharth spoke about, 12th Fail, would not stereotypically be associated with single-screen cinemas in Tier 2, Tier 3 towns. We have tried to figure out how we can actually program it smartly, create demand by having limited number of shows and marketing it in a very disruptive manner, in the most localized manner to bring it traction. And over a period of time, we've actually been succeeding. Now, Rome wasn't built in a day, and this whole scenario, the system that we're trying to find, will take its time and will take a sustained effort by the entire value chain. And I'm sure we can arrive at something where, so here's the thing, right? Mayank spoke about how they program over 1,200 films every year. As independent screens, trust me when I say this, out of the 52 weeks in a year, there are good 20, 25 weeks where we don't have content that's relevant to the kind of screens and the kind of audiences that come to our theaters stereotypically. And that gives us a gap of 20 odd weeks to try and innovate with our programming, to try and see if we can actually, over a period of time, with a sustained effort through marketing, distribution, and exhibition, build a market. The commercial pressures for a cinema chain that's either publicly listed or has, venture funding would possibly not give them the leeway to discount the programming and distribution of such films. And I'm not saying that's something bad, it's a genuine problem. Compared to that, the kind of overheads that we operate with, it allows us more scope to really experiment, to give these kind of films a chance. So let's actually try and engage around how we can have independent films coming to independent cinemas and actually ensure that that procedure is very cost effective and cheap for you guys and us, and how we can build this market over a period of time.
Interesting, thanks. So Mayank, how did that philosophy fit with your kind of structure? Because you're a nationwide chain with how many cinemas nationwide?
459 screens.
So how do you approach the programming of independent and art house films? Or do you approach it?
So, yeah, we do approach. So we welcome as a programmer also, and we welcome as a distributor also. So every month we are releasing two, indie filmmakers or films. Like this month we are releasing a film called Kasturi. Of course, it's also presented by Mr. Anurag Kashyap. And we have been releasing such films. So one of the great examples I would like to share is Jungle Mahal, a film made by Anurav Chakravarti, FTI graduate. And we released this in first week of Jan this year. And they had only a budget of 10 lakh rupees. And we did help them to release at Cinepolis and other centers. Maybe, of course, not 1,000 screens with that budget, because there is an economics, there is an ecosystem. We released in 20 centers. And it did run for 2 weeks. So they definitely got the mileage. And not only Jungle Mahal, pre-COVID, we have various, many examples. Like we did release a film called Kissa, Enlighten and NFDC. Then we did release Chintu Ka Birthday in 2019, which eventually, so it started at 7 cinemas at Cinepolis in India and ran for 3 weeks and eventually got sold at Z5. So there is opportunity. And as Akshay said, there are 20 weeks. I would say there are more than maybe 20 weeks to release these films. When we talk about mainstream cinemas, they are in maybe 15 to 18 weeks. Rest all the weeks, we definitely have opportunity to release and give the exposure to the audience.
Okay, thanks. So we'll come back to that in a second, because it sounds a little bit about the platform releasing structure where you're doing it in select cities, but let's come back to that later. Because it sounds like both of you are dealing directly with the filmmakers, is that right? you're talking about when you release these films, you're actually dealing with the director or the producer.
Through distributors generally.
Okay, so Shibashish, let's come to you, Distributors Association. Can you just explain a little bit about how independent distribution works in India, or does it work? Is it all just the studios distributing films?
So, I think if you look at the journey of independent film in India, it was there in form and manner in the last 100 years, if we look at it, right? I mean, we have seen films of Satyajit Ray, Mrinal Sen, we have seen era of Shyam Benegal, we have seen era of Adul Gopal Krishnan. So, there, in India, there was always a rich parallel voice of filmmaking, and there was always a strong commercial filmmaking. And it's not. I mean, we don't make those mistakes now, but it's not necessarily, as Sid also explained that time. When you talk India means multiple languages, multiple genres put together. The evolution of those languages or the evolution of kind of films have also, over a period of time, have been very interesting. I mean, if I give you some data, like say from after independence or after the national award has been instituted, the number of times the best film has came primarily from the two languages. One is Malayalam and one is Bengali, right? But over the period of time, we have seen in both those languages also significant commercial films. Now, for commercial films, there was always a production distribution structure, exhibition structure. It was established over a period because large investment, there was always a community who are distributor who will buy the film or not buy the film, and then they will take it to an exhibitor. There will be monetary commercial understanding between exhibitor to distributor, sometimes distributor to producer, etc. Fortunately, unfortunately, probably unfortunately only, that science or that culture never or ever has got that robust for independent films in India. And the reason is very clear. The reason is that ultimately independent films are made with a passion of saying a voice, an issue, a story which needs to be told for the audience, not necessarily always with a business sense. So there is always first a creator or a writer or a director who wants to tell a story, and then he or she starts scouting that who will back this vision. And more often than not, or I mean in the reverse, I mean basically in a very few cases, the established studios or producers have came forward to back that. There are always, of course, there are aberrations. I mean, even if you look at the so-called studio, what we stock in India is also probably the last 20 years. From 2000 onwards, we have seen companies which started to become a company. Before that, there used to be individual producers. And right now also, there are a lot of individual producers who are doing great job. So it was always a hustle. Let's admit that fact of life. There was never ever a situation that there was a structured system of where you can distribute or produce, etc. Better chance, what we have seen over last few decades is a better chance if there are independent maker is able to join hands with a more known creative producer or a creative maker, then many point of time the studio comes forward because of the understanding or conviction. I'm not necessarily saying that that is a route to be followed, but we have seen in the past that happens. And then probably the studio takes care of the distribution. Otherwise, sometimes individual distributors, sometimes individual exhibitors who take this primarily for the theatrical part. Non-theatrical part is which brings the main secured amount of money is as apparent as everyone. I mean, you have to go through that 4 or 5 pay TV channels and 4 or 5 digital channels and try to get it. Yeah.
So it seems for nationwide distribution, you really do need to have a studio behind you, a kind of a champion. Otherwise, it's going to happen on a very localized, regional or statewide basis. Is that a fair summary?
I mean, in the country today, there is no national studio. Let me put it that. There is not one company in the last 150 years of Indian industry who can say that, okay, across all languages, we have the power of doing a studio, because it's a very complicated market. It's not like another standard market. There are some 20-odd languages who are all flourishing. So I think in this kind of country, I think probably a decentralization is better than trying to have a centralized structure. every town, every state, every region have the top 3 guys who can do a fairly good job in that market. So even if suppose a Malayalam indie filmmaker need not have to get a studio from Bombay. If they get a good producer or a financier in Malayalam, he or she will be able to make a film and release. He or she will be able to, the financier will help to sell the film also, non-theatrically. So
Right.
I think decentralization is better for a country like us. I don't think that we are mature to have a centralized.
Art house distribution in India is really the same as art house distribution in Europe. It's a very fragmented landscape and you're trying to get coverage across that whole region. Mayank, coming back to you, so what you mentioned, obviously when you pick up a small film, you're not putting it in every single cinema in India. So are you focusing on the metros? How do you do it? Because it sounds kind of like a platform releasing model.
Absolutely, it's a platform releasing model. And so we choose as per the data. If it's a Malayalam movie like Angamala Diaries, then we would love to release that in a circuit where the regional works, where Tamil, Telugu and Malayalam audience come, or those centers. If it's Jungle, which is a horror and thriller, so we have a data in out of 90 cinemas or out of 459 screens, which screens the horror genre works better. So there, we'll choose those top 15 or top 20 location to release it.
But what is your decision-making process? Because it must be a financial decision, right? You're not doing this just to be altruistic and help indie filmmakers. You need to get a return on your money.
Absolutely. So we are doing for Cinepolis. So Cinepolis is the one who brought megaplexes in India. We have a 10-screen multiplex, 10-screener, 15-screener. And why do we have this? Why are we making this? We want good content. We want to expose this content. We want to support these contents so that this content market develops and more good content comes. And then that's why, when these content comes and we program it organically also, of course, there'll be footfalls. And that's how the entire, it's all associated with that. Unless we promote it, we push them to play and expose it. Making our screens, so many screens will not be then valuable.
Of course. So how has streaming affected your business? I'm asking the two cinema chains here. I hear such contradictory views. Sometimes people say to me that streaming is saving the independent film business because there is another stream of revenue there, and then other people say it's killing it. So, Akkshay, what do you think?
Sure. Well, I'd like to believe that streaming and theatrical are actually two avenues that beautifully complement each other. Because let's take, as much as we are in the middle of a gathering of indie filmmakers, let's speak of an example that I'm sure all of you are aware of. RRR. How exactly did it go and become this mammoth that it did in North America? It went to streaming, people discovered it on Netflix, and then it went theatrical and became the tsunami that it did. For a lot of Indian films, especially through the advent of the pandemic, and as unfortunate a time as it was for all of us in terms of the humanity angle of it, it actually allowed us to discover content that we otherwise in our day-to-day life would not have watched possibly. So suddenly you have Malayalam films, Tamil films, Bengali films that are being discovered in other parts of the country. A whole syntax of cinema that's suddenly finding traction and vice versa. So I really think, Liz, these are two platforms that complement each other beautifully. In terms of it impacting theatrical, well, I guess it's possibly impacted the national chain a little more than it's impacted us, because the multiplex film, as it was called in India, the more urban, the more niche films, a lot of people are unfortunately choosing to watch on streaming platforms. But the ones that stereotypically have worked with independent screens in the tier 2, tier 3 markets have actually become bigger and stronger in terms of the kind of box office draw that they had. So it is a little fragmented in India. But I truly believe that overall, when the dust settles and we have a more stable scenario, both these platforms will help not just the exhibition sector, but all the filmmakers eventually to, over a period of time, allow the largest possible audience to discover their movies and monetize them in the best way possible.
So I agree with Akkshay, and to add Akkshay, like how he said, both complements each other. It definitely complements each other. So we have a lot of data to support that as well. Like for example, movie like John Wick, which in India, part 1 did 1 crore net, part 2 did 2 crore net. And suddenly when we see part 3, it's doing 13 to 15 crore net. How does it happen? Like it happens because of streaming. Because movie was available, it was a good film, and probably didn't find the audience when it was released in the theaters. And but when audience went to streaming, they saw the film, they liked the film, and then they came to theaters. And not only English film, but also movies like Badla or many other Hindi films. We see the expectation or target or budget of producers and exhibitors for a certain film is 50 crore net. But we see that movie is doing 100 crore from, because why? Because people have watched a lot of content, different content on Steam, and they develop the habit. So then, hence, we have new audience there who have, developed a habit of watching different films on streaming, available at home, and then coming to theaters as well.
And what happens when a film has been on streaming and then goes to a cinema? Does that ever work?
We haven't tried that, but I believe in US during pandemic, some studios tried a parallel release, but unfortunately it didn't work for them. And then they took the call of not having a parallel release and respecting the window.
So you've never tried day and date? You usually have a window?
Yeah, we have tried with the window.
Right, okay. And Shibashish, what are your thoughts on, can theatrical and streaming work together? You were explaining a scenario where the global streamers come in and they take world rights, and then they have their own agenda and release schedule, and of course the theatres in India are just operating in one country and they've got their ideal release schedule. So can this work, especially from the point of view of return on investment?
So what exactly is your question?
So theatrical and streaming, as a monetization model, can they work together, or will they always be slightly in conflict?
So theatrical and streaming only has to work together. I don't think anything can be a replacement to the other, especially for a country as wide as us. And I'll probably not necessarily say streaming, I will say theatrical and other monetization, because the platform is constantly changing. To give a background of this, like in the mid-80s or before mid-80s or 70s, the only revenue used to be theatrical, right? Then we got DD, which is our terrestrial TV, Doordarshan. Then there was the era when music revenue used to be the second most important revenue after theatrical. Then we used to have home video, which is like cassettes and CDs and DVDs. Then mid-90s, when first Zee TV came with their pay TV or general entertainment channel, so that became an opportunity for monetization. And last 5 years, last 7 years, we are seeing streaming. So what we have seen, actually it is not theatrical or non-theatrical, it is outdoor entertainment and indoor entertainment. So outdoor entertainment remains static in that place as a medium of entertainment, people who wants to move out of their home and want to see something. The indoor entertainment has changed over a period of time in terms of the technology, and I'm sure that more and more newer technologies will come in the situation. Till now, at least in the country like us, it looks like both has to coexist. One can't replace the other.
Okay, thank you. So we're running out of time already. So I'm going to open this up to the floor. Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, I'm Kavita Bahel. I'm a documentary filmmaker. Thanks for the insightful session. And my question is, the documentaries are the films which have been bringing laurels to India in last, say, 4 years. But it's a slippery road full of potholes. I just want to know, be it production, be it distribution, is this thing that Indian films, the documentary films, are being noticed, going to the Academy Awards, is it changing anything for the people who would like to fund these films? Thank you.
Well, absolutely. Whether it's documentaries, whether it's indie films, whether it's feature films, I truly believe that the important bit is to ensure that there is an identified audience that you have, and you can make your marketing, communication reach that audience. See, all of us exhibitors will very happily program any content in any format that has an audience, because we are eventually, at the end of the day, driven by certain commercial pressures. But having said that, I truly believe that documentaries are, I personally am a big consumer of documentaries. Unfortunately, you don't get to watch them in theaters. But if you can make it compelling enough for an audience to want to go and buy a ticket for it through the marketing and the communication, or by choosing subjects that are compelling enough, I truly think that can happen. Now, I'll give you an example that may be very radical out here, right? A film, and I'm not going into the politics of it, the right or wrong of it, but the Kashmir Files was not exactly an entertaining feature film. It was, the format of it or the storytelling of it was in a very docudrama format. And look at the kind of numbers that it's had. Now, again, like I said, disclaimer, I'm not endorsing or criticizing the politics of it, but here's a film that the maker managed to excite a huge audience about, and it did the business that it did. So if you choose interesting subjects which have an audience, and you can communicate the subject and create a compelling enough traction for it with an audience, I'm sure they can do phenomenally well.
Thanks. Any more questions?
Hi, my name is Kanchan Pant. I'm a filmmaker, and my film is screening here in MAMI. It's called Dear Latika. I'm getting overwhelming response on my film, but the thing is, I don't have a legacy and I don't have stars in my film. So people like us, the independent filmmaker, how do they reach to people like you or to the platform? I mean, if you don't have any big name behind you.
So, you can always reach us through, we have a contact ID on the website. And we keep getting emails, and people do reach us. So I don't see it difficult for it. Please do that.
I'll just jump in with a question, because we haven't talked about the costs of marketing. As, when you haven't got a star or you've got serious subject matter. Is the cost of marketing an independent film the same as a blockbuster? Is it possible to do it more cheaply now?
Of course, it's not same, and it's definitely possible. After digital has come, one doesn't need to, go as higher as crores, like to choose a print or TV medium, but they can also choose an influencer. That's also a big way of marketing films, regional influencer or national influencer. And then they are aggregators, who promote the films, like aggregators like Paytm and Book My Show. They heavily promote the film. And the audience is also available on their platform. So we believe for independent filmmakers, these are the two very easy and nominal, medium to promote the film.
So you need a champion, but other
If I can
strategies?
just add to what Mayank said, we spoke about platform distribution. I also think it needs to be complemented by platform marketing. We need to go back to the older ways of hyper-localized marketing. A lot of movies that you guys make may not warrant a release of a 50 or 100 or 200 screens. They may start with, 5 or 10 screens in the country, and rather than trying to do an umbrella marketing or a carpet bombing strategy around it, just go, once you have a release plan in place, which can happen by working with distribution partners like Cinepolis. And I just noticed we have the distribution head of a company called UFO Movies, which has its presence in about 2,800 cities and towns of India. Now, for an Assamese film, or an Odia film, or a Naga film, or a Punjabi film, it may actually make sense to partner with a company like that, which has deeper presence in the grassroots. Partner with them and try and see if you can trailer your film in that region over a period of time through their network, or through the network of a company like Cinepolis or PVR Inox, or whichever distribution partner you go with, to do that hyper-localized marketing, create awareness in that region where you're going first, monetize that, and then go region by region, conquer kingdoms as they come along.
Interesting, thanks. I think we've got time for one more question.
Hi. Okay. Should I ask? Okay. Yeah. Hi, sir. My question is for Mayank sir and Akkshay sir. So it's basically for a Marathi film. So Mayank sir, can you please guide me? कि suppose हम लोग फिल्म बनाते हैं, मराठी फिल्म बनाते हैं, तो always I am told and we are told from the distributors that कि मल्टीप्लेक्स नहीं ले रहे फिल्म बिकॉज फ्राइडे सैटरडे के बाद वो उतर जाती है बिकॉज लोग भी नहीं आ रहे बिकॉज 250 रुपये का टिकट है. ऑब्वियसली इट्स अ बिजनेस मॉडल, आई कैन अंडरस्टैंड. बट अगेन एज एन इंडिपेंडेंट प्रोड्यूसर बिकॉज कस्तूरी इज बैक्ड बाय अनुराग कश्यप एंड नागराज मंजुले सर, ऑब्वियसली 7 दिन के लिए रुकेगी. बट अगर मैं इंडिपेंडेंट प्रोड्यूसर हूँ, फाइनेंसर हूँ, तो अगेन 3 दिन में अगर फिल्म उतर जाती है तो आई एम नॉट गेटिंग एनी रिकवरी फ्रॉम द कॉन्टेंट. एंड कमिंग टू द पॉइंट, अक्षय सर, जब हम लोग सिंगल थिएटर में जाते हैं, जैसे आई एम फ्रॉम कोल्हापुर, सो देर आर 5 सिंगल थिएटर्स, बट दिस इज माई पर्सनल ओपिनियन. अगेन अगर कोई भी सिंगल थिएटर में फैमिली नहीं जा रही बिकॉज द एनवायरमेंट एंड वो अच्छा नहीं है जहाँ पे लोग जाए, अगेन 80-90 रुपये में आई कैन सी द फिल्म, बट अगेन वो एनवायरमेंट नहीं है जहाँ पे मैं अपने फैमिली के साथ लेके जाऊँ. जब तक आप फैमिली को लेके नहीं जाओगे, रिकवरी मॉडल नहीं आ रहा है. तो 60-70 थिएटर में भी, सो आप बता सकते हो 60-70 थिएटर स्क्रीन में भी अगर हम लोग.
Thank you. We're running out of time. Can we just quickly summarize
this is the
the
worst
question?
I'm just completing.
Yeah.
So 70-60 थिएटर में भी जाते हैं. So what should be the business model? Please guide me. That's the question.
Hi. So on releasing, first of all, whether it's, I think, your film or Kasturi, when we signed, we didn't sign with Nagraj Manjule sir. We signed as an individual filmmaker who had come to our office. As I said, we have released Jungle Mahal, and we have a list of release. Chintu Ka Birthday had no distributor. It was released by Enlightened Film Society. Angamala Diaries in North India was released by 1018 MB. So there are people aggregators. Maybe we don't know. Maybe we don't know how to reach, to the right cinemas for them. That can be the one miss here. And maybe we can work with Mami, or maybe we can with different agencies. How do we, market ourselves so that everyone, can reach us and we are easily available. And coming to on the performance, of course, there is economics, but you definitely get a chance. If you know the Marathi rule also, for releasing a film, every Marathi film has to be released in theaters. We do respect, and we respect in every region, not only Maharashtra, but in Karnataka also, in Punjab also. We do give a platform, we do release it. Unfortunately, if the audience doesn't come because of any XYZ reason, it has to get out, after the 3 days.
And just to add to the single screen bit that you said, what I can tell you is over the last few years, and especially the years of the pandemic, it's literally been a survival of the fittest scenario, where a lot of single screens that were in a horrible condition and couldn't really attract audiences have actually shut down. So most of the ones that actually still exist are the ones that have renovated, that have put in the investments to make them worthy of attracting, a sizable audience. And that's the reason they still survive and continue to exist. So that's not as much of a problem. That's more a perception than a true problem. So I'm pretty sure if you really choose to go that distribution route and back the single screens where the ticket prices are significantly lower, it's an experiment that's waiting to happen, and I'm very sure that if it's done right, it will have great dividends.
Thank you.
Interesting. We've been talking about multiplexes and single screens. Do you think there's any space in India for specific art house cinemas, purpose-built spaces that just show independent films?
So Liz, not exactly art house cinemas dedicatedly, because the cost of the real estate where these run and the cost of operations is pretty high. But what I certainly see a gap for is the art house shows, right? So
within the existing structure.
That's right. So let's say in the week of Diwali, where there's the Tiger franchise of Yash Raj from the Spy Universe, that's going to release in a week like that. If you ask me for my 9 p.m. show, of course I won't have, the ability to give up on that opportunity cost. But if we can figure a scenario where in a certain number of weeks where you don't have these blockbusterly films, which is my opportunity cost, if we look at, let's say, a 10 a.m. show or 11 a.m. show, which is priced in a subsidized manner, and over a period of time, we make it a consistent thing, I'm sure there will be an audience that will develop the habit for consuming it in that show, in that circuit of cinemas. So it is a process that will take time, but I'm sure we can create that.
Maybe the pre-Diwali week also, we do not have many.
We
have many smaller films, 10 smaller films, but we are giving the platform. We are trying to, we want all the films to work. And among all the films last week, 12th Fail did work. Saturday was double, then Friday, and Sunday is triple, then Friday. And
so kind of like counter-programming. which we could see more of.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're really out of time now, so I just want to say thank you to the speakers, and I'm very happy that we didn't just talk about problems, we immediately went into solutions. So I'm feeling optimistic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz, Shibashish, Akshay, Mayank. Thank you so much for this very concrete, constructive conversation.